Are you going to start?
In due time.
I think it's your turn to start.
I think I started the last one.
Okay. so do you want to start together? Let's do this together. Are you ready?
How do you start?
Let's start together. Let's start together. 1, 2, 3. Hello,
hey, everybody.
Okay, you said
hello, everyone.
You said
we should have probably talked about.
You said hey, everybody, and I said hello, everyone.
Yeah, because the first video you said hey, everybody.
Okay, so let's say, okay, wait, we're going to say, hey, everyone. Okay? Okay, ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Hey, everyone.
This is
Chris and
Kelly with
Marriage Medics.
That was horrible. Okay, we'll work on that.
Obviously. These people are going to tune out instead of tune in.
No, maybe not. Okay, so are you going to tell them about the book?
Yeah. We are going to share with you just a little bit about some of the books that we're reading. We will try to leave some information in the description and tell you a little bit more about the books. But what we want you to do is have the opportunity that we have had in reading these books. And I'm not an avid reader. Kelly is the reader for us as we do this, and I'll kind of give you a little bit of what we're doing. When we sit down to read our books, usually it's a very difficult, daunting task to find an hour to stop the world so that we can sit down together and read our books. And you'll kind of...
What?
You started to speak. I didn't want to
I
cut
said
you
yes.
off. Oh.
I just said yes. I'm agreeing with you.
So, like along the way, you will find out more and more about us. But we have as busy of lives as what you have, and we struggle with time management and trying to make the time that needs to be made for us to have the relationship time that we need to have. And so working on our books is something that really takes discipline for us, even though we both work together and we spend a lot of time together. It still is very difficult to find the time, to make the time, to push everything out of the way to do this. So when we're telling you these things, we're not trying to say, hey, you know, look at us, we've got everything figured out. That's actually what we're not saying. We're actually saying, if you don't try to start figuring it out never comes. So we're reading a book right now that's called Living Together in Knowledge, and it's by Don and Jane McWhorter, and they wrote the book together. So when you read this book, you will see some of this is from Don's perspective, and some of this is from Miss Jane's perspective. And as you read, you'll see the transition of the chapters, and I really like it because it's written from a husband and wife to, hopefully, husbands and wives. If you're reading this book as a single person, bravo, because you're trying to prepare yourself a little better to be a better married person. But if you're reading this book as a married couple, I would strongly recommend that you do it as a couple. It's really cool for a man and woman to have put together the authorship of a book as a husband and wife team, directing it to you as a married couple, as a reader team. And it just really came across to us in a very good way. And this is one of the ones that we couldn't decide which one we wanted to do next. So we went ahead and did 2. And so we're going to share with you just a little excerpt from one of the chapters. And we would recommend this book to you. I'm sure that you can buy it. Flip it over to the back there and let me look at the price. Well, it has no price.
That's no price.
So
I'm
let me
sure
see
it's
the
pretty
UPC.
cheap.
The UPC will tell you. Where's the UPC? There's not a UPC.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume the book is around $10, and you can still find it. The publisher is Publishing Designs in Huntsville, Alabama. So no, Yeah, Publishing Designs in Huntsville, Alabama. Quality discounts are available from, and then it gives that. This book has a copyright date of 1988. So,
it's so crazy how there's so much of it that applies today and more, but we're still dealing with the same problems and just sometimes worse problems.
Worse problems?
Well, in certain areas, I would think, because there were certain things that weren't there. I'm sure back then it was probably
social
the same
media
to them,
wasn't there.
Yeah, there wasn't any there.
Videos like this weren't there. I mean,
yeah.
you had in 1988, you had to have those big, ginormous Sony cameras that took like 4 feet square to put them on a tripod, and you put those tapes in them that were like this big, you know, and so it was a different world back then. Yes, in technology, but it wasn't a different world back then as far as humanology. As far is that a word?
I don't know. Not sure.
As far as human interaction, we've basically all been the same since the beginning, except for all the things that are trying to infiltrate our marriages. There are some things, and that still comes down to human people.
It just seems like it's a little easier to do certain things in the world today than maybe it was in 1988, as far as because of technology.
And we were still kids in '88. I mean, kids. So,
yes.
Going back to the book, Kelly's going to read just a little excerpt from the book, and as she reads this, then we're going to try to have a conversation about this. And here's how we do it. We read the book, and we underline. We make marks in our books, and we try to stop when we hear something that either is a chord that strikes with us individually, something we need to work on collectively, or something that we think might be beneficial for you. So as we do these books, we're doing it from our own vantage point, trying to improve our lives individually, trying to improve our marriage, but then also trying to improve the way that we can help somebody else. And so that's what we're trying to do. So that's just a little glimpse into how we do what we do. But go ahead and read.
Yeah, and we were our topic today is gonna be communication, because in the last video we were talking about how selfishness and communication were two problems that caused it caused us to have a lot of problems in our marriage and ended up causing the downfall of our marriage. So we want to talk about, which there's plenty more. That last video on selfishness, denying self, was like 19 minutes long, and we probably could have went on.
It's like 19 years worth of material.
We could have went on for hours and hours about selfishness. So there's a lot of material on that. But another thing is communication, so we wanted to talk about that today and just have a little short video on that. So I'm going to read a little insert that we found helpful when we were reading this book, and very interesting. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. True communication, and these are suggestions for developing good communication. And right before they talk about the different levels. There's like 8 levels of communication, and those are very interesting and
maybe that's
very
a video
informative. Yes, to read and go over. But
these
are
like
suggestions.
With most stuff, we do some things backwards. We do stuff out of order. When you get married and you start spending time together as a husband and a wife, there's no manual that tells you when this is going to happen and when that's going to happen, like that little book we had when the kids were expecting, you know, what to expect when you're expecting. Mm-hmm. And it kind of gives you, nothing is in concrete in anything when it comes to how you interact with someone else and the flexibility and all that kind of stuff of relationships. But it is a very good thing to kind of have a generalized idea from somebody who's been there. Like if you wanted to know something about, we're sitting right now on Bay Spring Lake, and Bay Springs, is it spring or springs?
I think springs, I don't know, but it's beautiful.
So there's more than one spring, of course. But as we're sitting out here and I'm looking over this, we went up to the visitor center several days ago, and they had maps of all the water, all the different avenues or the different connections back to this body of water. And part of that map system showed some of the hazards under the surface of the water. And so when we were looking at those maps, it showed that there were some under the water, logs and maybe, sandbars or whatever, so that if you're ripping it in a boat headed over there to the fishing hole, you certainly want to know where those things are, but they're under the surface. And of course, the water is like a mirror when you're running, 25 miles an hour. I don't even know if you can go 25 miles here or not. But when you're ripping it out there, going in a boat, you don't see anything that's under the water. Well, when you get married, sometimes you don't see what's going to be under the surface, that it's going to pop its head up every now and then, and you're going to have to know how to deal with it. So it just makes so much sense to listen to somebody who's been there and done that and kind of written a little bit of a roadmap for you. And that's what we're trying to do, is share some of those things that have really come across to us as being powerful.
Okay. True communication has to be a two-way street. Both husband and wife must participate willingly. One mate can explode or tell the other one off, but it takes two to communicate. If one wants to and the other one doesn't, the former has a terrific selling responsibility. Another one we wanted to talk about and mention to you that was really good. Good communication is impossible without trust. Neither party is going to make himself vulnerable to attack very many times. Your mate is not going to tell you how he really feels about something until he first feels secure in expressing himself. Trust has to be earned. We ourselves must be trustworthy of the other's confidences. Slowly but surely, as our mate works his way through the different levels of communication, we offer the security of our trust. Without fear or reservation, a husband or wife should feel free to admit, "I'm afraid" or "I'm embarrassed," without the worry of being ridiculed or rejected, or having the admission thrown up to them at a later time. The need to be known and the fear of being known constantly battle within each of us. That's good.
That's where we underlined.
That's good. If you have made me feel secure in your love, and if I completely trust you, then I am free to place my jumbled thoughts in your hand and feel confident that you will gently blow
the chaff.
I've gotten that word wrong every single time I've read it.
The chaff.
The chaff away while tenderly grasping the grain. A young couple just beginning marriage should be aware of how sacred this trust is. It cannot be developed overnight, but can come more quickly if both realize its importance and make a conscious effort to make one another feel secure. By the way, you're gonna
jump in here.
Well, by the way, you're gonna learn that the little cliches. You're gonna learn this about me probably pretty quickly. But the little cliches, like if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. I probably got that one right because that's pretty simple.
You did.
But I'm horrible at those, and so I take one, like the duck one, and I'll put it to another one, and I make my own cliche, and then my whole family is like, "Where did that come from? What does that mean?" And so I'm bad. I'm horrible at cliches.
No,
So
you're
just
really
throwing that in
good. You're creating new ones every day.
Yeah, just throwing that in there.
So if you catch a cliche that needs, a little something, share that with us in the comments. We're actually checking the comments, and we're reading, and we're looking forward to communicating with some of you guys through the comments. So
yes, and subscribe too. Not because for the numbers, we don't care how many people are subscribed to the channel. It's just the more you subscribe, the more our videos will bump up to the top. So when somebody's searching for marriage counseling, or not that this is counseling, but marriage advice, anything like that, it'll bump up to the top, and maybe we can help people, because that's the one thing we're concerned about. So if you don't mind, just hit the subscribe button. Am I shaking my leg?
we're sitting on a bench.
And I'm shaking my leg.
To the point that I'm...
Normally you do that.
I have been...
Normally...
I have been conscious of it sitting here to not do it, because when I do it, you're going to be bouncing up and down. You see that? Do you feel it?
You were just doing.
Yeah,
and I didn't even know that.
No, I'm stopping your leg because I'm literally sitting here getting car sick.
Oh, whatever.
I'm kidding. I'm not I don't get car sick. She does.
That's me.
But
okay, anyway, back to communication. Go ahead.
One thing I wanted to point out.
Wow, we're already into 15 minutes of this video. Wow. Go ahead.
People have done turned it off. The average time on these things is only like 6 minutes. So...
Go ahead.
Just start it again.
Go ahead.
Put another one.
No, go ahead. Communication. We can do a second part too. Go ahead with communication. Go ahead.
One of the things that I thought was really neat about this section, and I would have to go back and read the context of the chapter to see who was the writer of this chapter, whether it was Don or Jane. But one of the things that I thought was really cool is, as you read that good communication is impossible without trust, he used the male pronouns. Whomever it is, the author does. Your mate is not going to tell you how he really feels about something until he first feels secure in expressing himself. Trust has to be earned. Women communicate. Now listen, I know I'm not telling you anything new, fellas, but I am telling you that women communicate. They
Yes.
just give them half a chance to communicate, and they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you some of the details that you had no idea could be captured in a moment of time, like with women. You know, just ask a woman how, nail it down to one specific thing, and see the details that come out of all this descriptive terminology that she's going to use for you. Men usually, we just kind of hit the highlights. Yeah, I went to the lake. The end. It's like, well, what'd you do at the lake? Well, went to the lake, you know, the things you do at the lake, that's what we did. Well,
women want details. And my kids always gave me a hard time because they always said, when I asked them a question, that, well, what did she say? Went for a job interview. Well, what did she say? What did he say? Well, he said, you know, blah, blah, blah. Well, what was his tone of voice when he said it? And so it used to be just a running joke that it was like, well, what was their tone of voice? Because that means a lot to a woman. And I think it's because we are more intuitive.
Well, you're geared for communication.
Men. So we take more out of things that are said to us. We dissect it more than men do. And men are kind of surface level, which I'm sure this is.
We're not surface level on everything.
This is across
we're surface level
across
on
the
communication.
board. This is across the board. I'm sure there's exceptions.
We just understand each other, you know. You know, like Tim the Tool Man, you know.
Yeah.
You know, there's just not a whole lot of need for men to talk to men like women talk to women. You know, because most of the things that we're interested in don't have anything to do with what you're saying. It's more what you're doing. You know, we're out hunting. You don't talk when you're hunting, right? You know what dude's doing that's on the other side of the holler over there from you. You know what he's doing because he knows what you're doing, and y'all are on the same page with what's going on. You don't have to do a whole lot of talking. But
it does take two, and men have to be trained, or not trained by their wives. I'm not saying that. That sounded horrible. But they have to. I'm not saying that, but they have to train themselves and possibly take some of the recommendations of their wives to let out some of that communication and to open up in that area, because like the first point that says true communication has to be a two-way street. It does have to be two people communicating, and you can't sit and have a conversation. One thing that'll drive your wife crazy is if she's just pouring her heart out and trying to communicate about anything, even if it's something simple, something about I went to the grocery store and this happened to me, or if it's something more in depth that, hey, I need to talk. To sit there and just have a man, first of all, staring at the television over your shoulder, or not, looking down at a newspaper, not being engaged, which we talked about that before, because we talked about looking at each other. But if anytime that's any time that you want to talk, you really need to listen, because, and I know that takes a little bit more effort, it seems like, out of men. And a woman wants to hear her husband express his feelings, because men don't do that a lot, and that's where
that's where I'm coming back to right here. Most men feel like it is a booby trap to open up, and that like there's a tripwire, there's a pressure switch, there's a temperature switch, there's like several switches that's going to set this booby trap off. Motion detectors, all that kind of stuff. So men are very stealthy with how much they open up. And you sure not going to open up to another dude. Like, men don't open up to men. So that's why it may be so far for us to come in the area of communication, because that's just not how we're built. But if you want to have a meaningful relationship, you have to communicate, because the woman's need is to communicate. The man's desire is for the relationship to be better. So in order for that to happen, just like the woman has to make some concessions in how she communicates, or, you know, kind of draw it back a little bit from the communication line, the man needs to advance toward the communication line. And there's a happy medium there somewhere. You'll find it. It's under the surface of the water. You'll find it when it comes up. But the thing that I wanted to point out from this particular chapter, or this particular point, is where the need to be known and the fear of being known is constantly a battle within each of us. And when she read across that, the first time we read it, I was like, oh man, that right there that's pretty stout stuff, because a man wants to be a man. And he one thing that I will tell you, that men don't have to be told to be men. When we're growing up, we see men, and I can remember being a little kid and seeing men and thinking, man, you know, those men they're just, I wanted to emulate them. I wanted to do the things they did. I wanted to be, you know, be a big man. I wanted to be a man when I was a little kid. And then when you get to be a man, when you hit that age of, you know, I'm a man, nobody has to tell you to be a man. You've been aspiring for that for a long time. But sometimes we need to be told how to be a man. And one of the ways that we need to be told how to be a man is in the communication with your wife. They don't understand how we operate. We don't understand how they operate. That's one of those age-old things that you know, nobody will ever figure that out. But we do know that we can at least communicate with our spouse. I want my wife to be more to me than my fishing buddy, to be more to me than the guy that climbs a tree stand over across the holler. I want my wife to be something that's special to me, and the only way I can make that specialness is by her knowing me and me knowing her, and opening up and communicating and seeing what's actually on the inside of that emotional, and I said the word emotional, the emotional side of a relationship. Because so many people, they really thrive in the physical side of a relationship. You know, we go places together and we do things together, and we enjoy each other's company and all this stuff. But the only reason that you can go beyond the glories of life, I would say, is to have so much more underneath. Because there's coming a day to where you're gonna not be so spry, and you're gonna not be so this or so that, and maybe one day life's gonna hit you right between the eyes, and then have you banked all of your time and energy and investment into, well, we do things together. Well, what happens when you can't do things together anymore? What happens when, you know, sickness strikes, or you know, something happens with one of the kids, or you lose your job, or, you know, you got to move, or whatever. You need a whole lot more to your relationship than the good times.
Right. And I think this, I definitely see how this is going to have to be a couple of part video, several parts video. So I think probably we end this video, and then we start another one, another part of this, and go into what you talked about, what we were mentioning about the trust, because there's a few things that I think is pretty deep to talk about on that one. And
so you're going to start that video?
Yes. So
okay.
Now just join us with the next video, and we will. If you just comment and let us know, like if you want us just to keep going, but these may be like, we're trying to keep them at 20 minutes, 25 minutes, give or take. So
from the talking into this, it doesn't take long. We've got that little timer up there sitting talking to us, and it's saying 24 minutes right now, which we're going to clip out a little bit of the beginning because we had to turn the camera on or whatever. But, you know, 24 minutes is not very much time when you're doing the talking, but it's an eternity if you're doing the listening.
Right.
So we want to be mindful of that for you guys too, and try to do it so that it's somewhat tolerable for you guys on your end to deal with it and hear it, because the information that we're receiving, that we're trying to pass on to you guys, is only beneficial if you can stick in there and listen to it. So,
so we kind of touched on communication, and we will stop this one, and we will just tune into the next video, and we will continue this discussion.
See ya.
Bye.